On the road.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. All right, Mariah, well, let's have a roll call
Bob Wilkerson,
here.
Jeff Perry,
Here.
Terry Arcieri is excused, Will Harris,
Here.
Mike Hill,
Here.
and Brad Carlberg.
Here.
All right, so we have quorum. Very good. And we'll have the approval of the meeting summary. So does anyone have any changes to the meeting minutes?
I think so.
Okay, hearing none, we're gonna hear a motion from Jeff to approve.
I'll make a motion
I'll
To-
second it.
All
to
right,
approve the
it's been
minutes
moved
from the
and seconded.
26th meeting.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. And let's see, does anyone have any revisions or changes to the agenda?
I have one, more of a conversation with staff, you know, and the committee and probably at the end dealing with last month's, some of the material we got from last month, just to go over a couple things.
So you want to have it at the end of our workshop discussion or before it?
After, it's fine. It'd be better, probably after.
Okay, anyone have any issues with that? No. Okay, we'll approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we'll also have item number 4, I guess,
Right.
Jeff's discussion. All right. So does anyone have any conflicts of interest?
Nope.
Nope.
Hearing none. Our next meeting is gonna be April 15th, and the next everyone gets their taxes sent in on time, or has the excuse for the IRS. All right. And now we have the committee and staff updates. So, updates?
So I had Will email me about short-term rentals and wanting to know the status of that. So currently, the Board of County Commissioners will be having their next work session on April 23rd. And I have not sent out an email yet to my notification list, but that will be going out soon. We don't have any, the draft regulations aren't ready yet, so that's kind of why I'm waiting a little bit, because I know once I start putting out there the date, people are gonna be asking, well, where's the materials? So we're still working on the materials for that meeting. But April 23rd, I believe it's right after their regular meeting, so it's gonna be at 10 a.m. and it's scheduled for 2 hours. And then I do not know yet if they are going to open it for questions or not. They will make that decision. I don't know if they're gonna make it prior to the meeting and let me know, or else they'll make it at the beginning of the meeting. It's gonna be over Zoom again because of the amount of people that are interested. So we have to have that because the occupancy in here is obviously very small. But of course, if people don't have access to Zoom, they're welcome to come here as well. So that, and anything else, that's pretty much it. If they do not want me to come back again to them, I project that we could probably have the PAC meeting in May for short-term rentals. So we should have enough information by that meeting to bring you guys something in May.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone? Okay. Any other business? Okay, hearing none. Public comment. So you want to comment, Mr. Public?
Yes, well, my name is Chris Kay. I'm an interested citizen from the north end of the county, very much interested in, I guess, the future of Mason County. So being a mouse in the corner and eavesdropping, so I don't have anything particular to present to the group. So,
Oh, you're welcome along with
Right.
your friends, neighbors, and in-laws, you know.
right.
No, I have a comment. You can go ahead and unmute Ken.
Okay, Commission, thank you. Ken Van Busker. I live in Belfair. I'm a former member of the PAC, and I appreciate the work that you folks do. It's pretty thankless at some times, but it can also be pretty rewarding. I looked at the minutes of the last meeting, and it's been a while since I attended meetings, but I noticed that there was a couple people in attendance, both via Zoom and in person, that weren't reflected in the meeting minutes. I know Constance Ibsen was there and I was there. I think it would be good if the meetings are recorded, that be reflected who's there from the public. I also noticed that the chat function was being used. And it makes it really hard for yourselves, I imagine, and for the public that's in attendance in person. They can't see what's going on in the chat function. And I think the Board of County Commissioners had established some sort of procedure about that with their meetings. So it's just something you might want to reflect on. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Ken. These meetings are recorded and available after the meeting's over for posterity.
The chat function isn't recorded, I don't believe.
That's correct. And what Marissa has done is she has actually spoken or out loud, you know, what the chatter person was asking for.
Well,
But not
I
every
don't-
time.
No, I know it didn't happen every time because I tried to interject something at that last meeting and
Okay.
it didn't get answered. So it's just something that,
So what does the board members and staff think?
Oh, we need to accurately reflect who's here.
True.
Because I forget. I know all of us forget from time to time, so.
Don't the guests sign in?
So I think if we continue to use the chat function, like if people are asking questions or need clarifications, I think we need to have a point in the meeting at the end of a presentation where someone reads through that, probably staff reads through those questions, or if we've posted a link or something that we've noted that we've posted that. So that's one solution that I know when I've been on commerce workshops, that's what they do. They leave a time after a presentation for a staff person to read through those and then mention what kind of posts are in there. So it's read aloud, and
So that's the best practice from another activity.
that's what I've noticed from the Department of Commerce. So it seems to
What do you
work
think, Tom?
pretty well.
you might want to talk to the Board of County Commissioners and see how they do it. 'Cause I
Yes,
don't, yeah.
Mariah did check with them and
They don't have a policy. There's just kind of general best practice, but they never put anything in writing. It's for each group to make their own decision. We do monitor it between me and Marissa. We're both usually on Zoom and paying attention to that. And then as far as the minutes go, they're a summary, so I don't usually put all the guests. But that is something you could do if you would like.
I do not think that guests should be noted specifically. So it could say, you know, there were guests on Zoom and in the room. Only if people are talking should they be identified by name. If we had a meeting with 20 people or more or less, I mean, we're not going to be able to identify every single person by name in the minutes. That's not what we've done in the past. But if somebody testifies or they want to, you know, speak up about something, you know,
Yeah,
I have no
the
problem
last
noting their
one
name.
Being a
on site.
workshop, I would handle that differently than a public hearing. In a public hearing, there's a specific time for the public to speak, and then it gets noted who they are and what time it was.
Okay. What do you think? You're a guest.
The chat function,
That's an interesting question. So
the chat function can be collected by the host of the Zoom meeting, just like the recording can be kept.
The chat is
Cindy.
for my records as far as public records go, but they don't get posted along with the audio. I don't have a place for that.
So I guess to answer the question would be,
Yeah.
I see a difference between a chat that would be between the official
Mhm.
individuals that were in the meeting versus chat if it was just a guest
Mhm.
kind of, and I guess I'd see there would be two individuals, what you're describing, it could filter, is this a meaningful chat for the discussion? If it was just a guest.
Or they're discussing recipes,
Yeah, exactly. But if it was somebody that was an official member that was chatting, that probably would be worthy of noting somehow as far as the, your records go.
Okay,
But I can't imagine trying to capture all the chatter.
okay, well, thank you. So what do the commissioners think? Should we go with the staff as identified as the best practice and do that for a while and see how it works?
Yeah, I like the idea of reading the chats, they're recorded, like our verbal discussion. And I like what Mariah's doing, where she captures the intent of in the minutes, and then we have the opportunity to say, are the minutes complete or not? If they're not, we amend them. If they are complete, they're approved.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And at the end of the workshop or whatever, we go through them, make sure we've captured the essence and or answered the question of the chat. Or the whatever the heck the chat topic was. Let's try that for a while, see what happens.
As far as the sign in this, I don't have any problem with the way Kel mentioned it. If
Right.
people are testifying, sure, that
If
makes
not.
sense. And obviously the members are, checked in there,
Mhm.
so. That seems sensible. If it doesn't work, we can always adjust.
Mhm.
Mariah, do you capture, it's like when a guest comes in, they sign in the roster if they're physically here. Do you capture the Zoom guests on the sign-in list?
Not in the exact same way, there's not.
But it is
Sign in,
captured
but
in a different way. Okay,
The recording does have who's on.
great, thank you.
Okay.
So it is recorded.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else?
Does this body follow Robert's Rules of Order as it probably
Kind of,
should?
sort of. We very loosely use Robert's rules.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear that. You said something about Robert's Rules? Couldn't
We
hear the first.
sort of follow Robert's rules as specified in our bylaws.
I mean, I
To the letter.
don't have my copy, but I think the Robert's Rules would say anybody in attendance of the meeting should be annotated in the minutes. I mean, for say not to include them, which I thought I heard that said, that would go against. And like I said, you should
As
use
Mariah
the feet.
stated, that the attendees, whether they're physically here or on the Zoom, are captured. The only thing that's sort of missing is the guests who sign in. And that's handled a little differently, but anyway, the people's identities are captured. And yeah, like getting back to your question, Ken, we do follow Robert's rules, but not strictly to the letter. So.
Hey, whatever. Why not to the letter, but whatever. I'll have to get my copy of Robert's Rules because I'm not going to be a stickler. It ain't worth it.
Okay, well, I think we've beaten this one to death, so let's move on to the workshop.
Let's move on. Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to get it to. So we have a bit of a shorter agenda this meeting because we were originally gonna have short-term rentals this week as well. So I just wanna outline a few things before we start talking about criteria that may be appropriate for a priority matrix going forward. So project prioritization. The rationale for implementing a priority matrix is that it provides the commissioners a direction on projects that should take priority by looking at all facility and service projects together and how they weigh in relationship to one another based on the criteria the county has set. So there's different stages in choosing capital facility projects and services for a capital improvement program. And we know that at the beginning stages, it starts at the department level. And each department has their own priority programming. And of course, it's, you know, the level of programming is different for each department. The county has a process in place to evaluate those facilities or service systems. For example, and this is for example only, I'm not saying this is exactly how Public Works does theirs, but in different jurisdictions, Public Works, their roads department, for example, the county engineer would be looking at a priority programming array for roads and looking at factors such as traffic volumes, roadway conditions, metrics, safety and accident history, and matters of significant local importance when initially evaluating projects. And they would start putting a list together, and this would be their first level of prioritization. Then they would look at grouping those projects, whether they be bridge projects, projects that meet concurrency and capacity, new alignments, preservation projects, and so on. And then, like I said, that's just an example. It's going to vary widely between the Public Works Department and how they do it, and say the Parks and Trails Department. And then those two steps are performed by the county departments, and then the resulting list is typically then reviewed by a committee, and the makeup which varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but most likely is going to be consistent of a subject matter expert from the department where the projects are coming from that are serviced and where they're maintained, a representative from the finance department, and additional members of a CIP review group, so committee members. This CIP group is then going to take that list that has been provided by the departments and start ranking those projects against criteria. The criteria for a CIP is more heavily weighing on funding availability, what stages the project is maybe already in, timing and concurrency, and what the regulatory requirements are. So the CIP committee is going to be weighing it on different factors than what the department is initially weighing it on to create the list. The benefits of having a CIP matrix is that a variety of projects, that balance out the needs of all service areas are gonna be reviewed. We're maximizing the return on county investments by, another level of review. And then a process that provides better transparency. And in regards to transparency, even though the initial priority programming a department performs may produce a project list that should be pursued sooner than later, there are always various factors why we may not see those projects implemented within the 6-year finance plan. And that is what the CIP priority matrix process should help clarify. What would the process look like? What would a schedule look like for that? So, and this is just an example taken from, I believe it's the city of Olympia. And it's a little bit like it's a little bit different since their council and how their system is set up is a little bit different than us, but the departments first would be putting together that list of capital facilities projects. And there's a general timeline of, beginning of the year. Then you'd have the finance department providing that estimates of revenue, so our funding sources. And the CIP projects due from department. So about mid-year, those are due from them, and then that goes through an additional process of review and ranking against those criteria that are adopted. And like I said earlier, you definitely want someone from the departments that are familiar with the projects on there so they can answer questions as, the initial prioritization list that they put together, as well as finance. And then I know that some other places, I think it's Kenmore, they have other committee members on there that are not associated with the departments or the finance department. So, and then, so that would be 2 months of reviewing that, and then a preliminary CIP public hearing with the PAC members in September, and then review most likely with briefing with the BOC of that preliminary CIP. And then the process here, the capital budget gets its initial review at the beginning of December, and then final adoption kind of mid-December, I think. They do talk about the budget as early as October, right, with the BOCC. But then they have it kind of tucked down by December. So with this process, we'd be able to get the CIP adopted concurrently with the capital budget, which we should, because of course they're approving that first year. And it also gives the BOCC a chance to see those projects probably a little bit earlier on, see the criteria that it's been, reviewed against, rather than just having each department, give a whole set, rather than not being able to evaluate them as all the projects as a whole. So, yeah, that's one of the, I think that's actually, sorry, I missed one of those. Yeah. But that is one of the benefits of going to the BOCC earlier, is that they can see all the projects evaluated against each other, and not just the projects from each department without any kind of evaluation. The current objective, why you all got those examples, is to start looking at criteria that stand out. There's some obvious ones, the funding is important, what's available. The soonest, do we have grant funding that, we're able to match now? And then criteria that we rank higher or would give a greater weight towards the score. So this session is really to get your input back on the criteria from either Commerce. Those other examples really look like they've taken those criteria and just modified them to fit their needs. Commerce recommends the first 13 criteria on their list if you're doing something very basic. I can tell from the other examples that those examples have taken that criteria and just modified it a bit. And then the additional 14 through 28 are a little bit more specific, a little less commonly used. But, I'm just gonna send it back to you guys and get your input. And you don't necessarily have to have, what criteria you think would be the best or what you would give the highest ranking at this meeting. My goal is to get some input, definitely by April 11th. So I can go back to a meeting with the departments in May and give them that feedback and see what they think as well. So short, but just really want to get everybody's feedback. And of course, think of when I first come to you with the CIP and the questions you have, those are probably good questions to, pose. So
So the preliminary matrix and stuff, staff is kind of sort of really brainstorm that and discuss a little bit then, and that's how it came together? Or is it something that they've been using?
we have not used a matrix
Okay,
before.
okay.
So we have never used a matrix. It's come up and that there's interest in doing it, probably because there are a lot of questions during the CIP process about why was this chosen, and
Right.
it would help to answer a lot of questions.
All right. So this is new to you guys.
Yes, I don't think anybody else is.
Yeah, I've never seen it used. Maybe Jeff has more.
They have a matrix in TIPCAP, I mean, in the
Okay,
transportation, but
but we haven't done it for our CIP that I've seen.
I haven't seen it anywhere in anything.
Okay, so it's time to have a perfect little baby now. All right, so
It's a journey.
all right, Jeff, start us off.
Oh, good. First of all, I think it's needed. I think it would help in the endeavor of better communicating both to the board as well as the general public. I think that to do this adequately, and it doesn't uniformly apply through all departments, but I got to thinking, okay, you have certain projects, say like in waste utilities, but there might be something in legal, there might be something, community, there might be some other areas that need to be, looked at, Department of Health or something of that nature. So to me, there needs to be kind of at least a check off from other key departments. It won't universally apply for everything all the way through, but almost all of them at least have one or, a couple or more, reviews by others that would be required, and I think would be required. The other thing that comes loud and clear to me when I look at it is that you really need to have, and I'm smiling because you needled me on chapter 6 in the past, but we really need to have those things in chapter 6 of the Department of Commerce's guide for capital facilities plans, and needs those points in there for the department to be able to present, go through this and present it. Without the plan, I don't see what I call the plan. Without at least a high level strategic plan, I don't see how you can do this. As a case in point, let's just take something Alan's familiar with, the sewer system. It's always been a moving target what the capacity of that system is. I mean, I've heard all kinds of numbers for over 20 years about what it can or can't do. And yet it's still basically the same size as, as it was the day it was, turned over to the county. And I know participating with the developer in Allen, that there's a lot of assumptions made about capacity and what have you. A case in point was like the RV pump station in Allen and what its capacity is. And my observation, and there's a lot of factors that go into what a capacity is, but where I'm going is I'm not asking that these departments create like Shelton did, where you have a 1,000-page document of a sewer plant. But I think we need to understand at least the strategic or executive level, whatever you want to call it, what you really have, what its life is in different segments, what you're serving as far as land capacity, and where's that threshold. And it can move, if they invent, so you use less water in toilets and things like that, you might be able to go a lot longer.
Okay, so chair's privilege here. Once these matrices are established by the various departments, are they going to be under revision control?
You're talking.
No, I'm just in general. I would have expected that when you talk about a decision matrix, revision 0 or revision that new ABC or whatever the
I would say we are creating a matrix that we're putting in as an attachment to
Mhm.
the CIP.
right.
So it's not gonna be there's not gonna be a matrix for each department.
I'm just throwing it out. I mean, I'm just brainstorming right now. I understand that if you have a matrix that says for this particular activity on this day, it's gonna be locked down there, that way when you're looking at something, you know what it is. As opposed to somebody in there updating the spreadsheet with whatever they want. And then, wait a minute, this is different. Someone's gonna be in charge of the revision.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I used to work at the Lazy Bee, so we were big into configuration control.
So is not staff, but does the committee members comprehend what I'm saying as far as?
Not totally.
Yeah,
So
no,
Okay.
So what I heard was, before we start to look at projects, we need to understand whatever it is serving, whether it's a sewer system, whether it's a road, whether it's a park or whatever, and what's the requirement, what's the capacity of the system, to use a sewer example, versus where we're going. And so if we're looking at a sewer project, is it expanding capability? Is it, refurbishing something that is grown old, et cetera? But do we understand the pieces and parts?
right, because I mean, I don't see, when I look at how Public Works has conveyed it to the public and to the board, my observation is, we're not gonna all be sewer experts.
No.
And, but it troubles me when I'm not an expert and I go into something and, dig in a little bit, and it hasn't really, the analysis isn't there to where, what do you have for capacity in that UGA? What's being served by that sewer? And, where's the life of different pieces? Because there's different
Yeah.
things moving.
Well, I don't know the details. I'm surprised because normally things like that are licensed or approved for a certain capacity. So how is that number moving?
Because they will say, as an example, the county will say they're licensed to serve by ecology, maybe say 300,000 gallons per day of effluent. The problem is that when the system was designed, they figured that would be somewhere around 1,100 to 1,200 users. We're well over that. Well, now we're in the, as I recall, we're gotta be at least in the 1,400s now.
Okay.
And because different things change on water usage, better understanding water usage, and there is an issue with like a lot of sewer systems where there's what's generated, and then there's this little opportunity called rainstorms that generate what they call I&I infiltration that drive it off the off the numbers. But so where I'm going is this is I think what I'm really trying to say is hierarchically, I think this is something like this is needed. No getting around that, but I don't see how you can make any judgment if you don't have at least an executive summary of, so that somebody looking at it can say, this makes sense,
Yeah.
or
and
doesn't.
I look at this a little different.
Does not.
Okay, so let me throw a different perspective. So I think of when we have pick a project, sewer, road, park. One of the first question is, what's the need? Well, we need to go back to the park and we need to, refurbish, if you will, replace the equipment the children are playing on because code has changed. We have determined that there is a hazard, but there's something very, very clear that's driving this. On the sewer, where, like here we were talking, and there's a number of factors in there. What I would expect is the people who are advocating for the project is to be able to come in with those answers. And it sounds like we have some moving targets out there, okay? But from a matrix perspective, to me, that's, if the basic need of the project is in question, I don't even think you get to the matrix. I think there has to be, if you will, a need for the public, in this case, to even bring a project forward. And it sounds like we have some issues there.
Right, and I think we're similar. You're coming at a different way, but I think I'm saying the same thing, that you can't really do the matrix until you have at least a high level plan. Either from the standpoint of what people are needing services or what you've determined, through age or whatever of a system. I think the issues like of parks is one
Yeah.
thing versus sewers,
No,
I could see differences.
Well, you need to have the who, what, when, where, why, how
Right,
information available to start the activity going to be able to get to the matrix.
right.
so, okay, but. So it sounds like some of our systems, whether that's parks and serving our people and our children and our dogs, or whether that's sewer, whether that's roads, some of those systems lack that background.
Yes,
Okay, so we have one piece to say, how are we gonna fix that? All right, and think of this as flying, think of us as, some of us are passengers in an airplane. And the airplane is under construction at the same time. That's what we have here. So just think of it that way. It's a strange analogy, but just think of it this way, because we have to serve our community while we maybe start to figure out what some of these different systems, and there's a broad variety out there.
Right.
As we saw when we looked at the SIP, there's a broad variety of things we have to think about. So this is one thing, but once we say a project is needed, so this is going to be the basic, do we even need project X? Now we have a list of projects that we believe we need. So now how are we going to prioritize them? And I think that's where this is driving, if I understand correctly. And has anyone ever used a priority system, anything like this in their past?
No.
Okay.
like I said, the tip cap, has one, and
Okay.
a couple of times we brushed up against it, and I can't remember why we never totally got into it. I don't know if we just ran out of time. I'm trying to remember through the years.
Yeah,
why.
I haven't seen that in my tip cap experience yet, but the tip was approved the month before I got on.
No, and this,
Yeah.
there was a criteria of what roads.
Yeah.
But there were some things that tip cap brought that were not hitting that list, but were kind of like irritants, what we called irritants.
Yeah.
And one of them was like Bravo roads. they didn't have the loading, most of them didn't have the loading, but there was always a problem. And there was never the funding, there was never, there's 50 miles of roads that never got completed in this county. And so we, in the timeframe we were there, we basically established, we called it the 100-year program.
Mhm.
And just said, take a half a mile a year and start working it. And don't create any more of these. In other words, don't create easements or, different, and part of the problem's been past commissioners. They've created roads that should not really have been created in the past.
The only way you're gonna fix that is
Yeah, no, I know.
take one of those 3 seats and fix it yourself, okay?
No, well,
I mean, our commissioners, our representatives, that's up to our voter
no, I
population.
agree, but
That,
I was really pointing out
Yeah.
what I was pointing out is, we don't, I see we don't fully control it, but what the
Mhm.
intent was to try to say, stop
Yeah.
creating this and take on this much, and that,
And I think the county has continued to do that based on what I've seen for the past
Yeah.
6-7 years, and
Yes.
that's working well. So when I've done these types of, I've used a matrix like this before, in a previous life or a previous job. They're extremely useful because it gives decision makers, starting with us and ultimately moving to the Board of Commissioners, through staff, you have something to support, and it takes the subjectivity out and adds objectivity. I really like, and I'll just, so when we look at the 3 different scenarios here, we have one, the city of Waterville, we have a city of Moab, and then we have the spreadsheet that came out. The first 2 are PDFs and the other's a spreadsheet. And I want to sort of focus on the city of Moab. And the reason I want to focus there is when I look at Waterville, it has sort of a series of, 5 points here, 4 points there. And it is fairly specific. You're either in, life, health, and safety. Check, you're in or out. Either you have it or you don't. Legal mandate, 5 points. You have it or you don't. Sort of a 0 to 5 scale. The spreadsheet, very frankly, is very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, and good. Marissa, you're going up and down, your head's shaking, and so you agree. And the reason I say that is ultimately this type of a tool is really helpful to all involved, but it has to be, I'll say, comprehensive and complicated enough to handle the scenarios, objective across the spectrum of all projects, and simple enough to use. And that's what I like about the city of Moab. So there's project category, and they basically give us 5 criteria. You get 20, 40, 60, 80, or 100 points. And it goes from essential projects, when it starts to talk legal, safety, regulatory, you get 100 points. Okay, down to non-essential 20. And then that number is weighted by an overall 20% to your total score. And that's what you have sort of going across. And I really like, the criterion they have, I think is sound. It's relatively short with 7. I would add, and I would consider the following. 1, I think a criterion of executability has to be in there. So if you're in a project that's in the first, it's in the upcoming executable fiscal year. So at the end of this year, if we're talking a 25 or a 26 project, that thing better be executable. And I'll just use the example of our doc that we talked in here a couple months ago. When we talked about what is the scope, very frankly, I didn't get scope. It was, we need to fund $1 million so we can get somebody out here to really understand what we need. That's a non-executable project in my terms in the execution year. We should certainly fund the study, but the other, whatever, 800,000 needs to go to another project that's executable. So I'd add executability. I think we need to consider funding sources, and because I don't fully understand how monies come in, but if certain monies come in tagged, this must go to parks, this must go to roads, it must go to whatever.
Color of the money,
Yeah, color of money, we need to be sensitive to that. And maybe those projects sort of go on to a sub-SIP that are looked at separately. I think we need to, funding sources aside, have balance. So in my previous life, dealing with this on air bases in the Air Force, we took our pot of money and we said, basically, 1/3 goes to core mission. This is airfield, it's a transportation facility, it is basic, core things we need in the background. So think of that in our space here, it might be roads, it might be sewer, whatever we own. Some of it is core infrastructure on an air base, which was a little different than infrastructure. So it's the things I always say people don't see, but has to be done. And lastly is community support. And the general rule of thumb was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, with the recognition, any one of these could be 20% in a year, up to 40%. And that's where then, as you go through staff up to the board, in this case, or base leadership, they would sit back and then do that judgment call. But with a matrix, you got a score of 100 points total. You could fairly quickly say, hey, the funding zone, if we have, whatever, $40 million, hey, the first $50 million are score 70 and above. So sort of off the cuff, anything below 70 is off the list. We have 50 million listed in 70 to 100, and we're going to select 40 out of that. And then you can do the other criteria. So that would be my, short version of this, but the Moab one, I like that. It's simple, it's clear. Oh, one other. On your configuration control, there needs to be an independent check for realism. So when a department fills out and they get their score of 88, someone needs to look back and really say, is that a real 88? Or did they very generously apply this a little bit? Because people sometimes are not objective. They become more, oh yeah, I'm essential. No, you're not. And we need to help folks, because in fairness and ability to support our community, we have to be objective. Because we have to defend projects. Yeah, we have to defend it objectively. So, all right, I've said my piece.
So let's hear from the. Let's hear from the others.
Before he gets, since it's hot in his head, before he gets off, using this, how would you see the issue of like the different department heads addressing the same, in other words, like say legal or say finance or say these different segments of the county, or do you see it only by one department?
I see someone has to pull it all together. And so this is the one part that I'm still challenged with. How does the legal, should the legal department really be the right people advocating for their facility requirements? They certainly have the need, but should someone else really be
Sure, no,
saying,
I'm
is this
saying
right?
and I'm saying it differently, saying the legal towards saying something in Department of Health,
Oh,
the other way. I know it's,
well, I'm assuming there's a sort of a set aside for the SIP. Is that fair, or is that sort of open-ended in here?
What's that? Is what,
The capital improvement plan, is there, when we looked at it, we had a budget value based upon, the RAP 1, RAP 2, the 0.09%, et cetera. So there was a dollar value set aside for the SIP. I'm assuming this goes, so that's the dollar value you build that against, and then the departments are funded separately for their operations.
yeah, I wasn't quite going down I said finance and I probably misspoke, but I'm saying take legal review, because there's legal requirements, maybe a department, say the
Okay.
public utilities related to sewer.
Oh, so would legal then review and basically
So
say,
how would-
hey, do they have legal
You're right. In other words,
requirements?
how do you see that, or do you see it?
I would,
I don't know.
what I would suggest is find the right department that pulls all this together, and preferably that staff member have general awareness. If you start to involve too many, having, legal, environmental, et cetera, review it, is good. You'll have, I'll call it more accurate,
Right.
but your timeline's gonna be blown out of the water. You'll never make it. And you'll spin in circles. So at some point, good enough needs to pass. You know, so I don't know who that is, but that's what I would sort of suggest. I would try and, we need appropriate, but excessive reviews can happen.
Okay, so let's just take it out of that, from that segment, but take
Guys, we
public-
really need to hear from the other
I know.
commissioners.
there's time. There's plenty of time.
There is
Let me
always
go,
that.
let's listen to the others, and
Sure.
then we'll come back to questions. They,
No,
Mike has
you-
great ideas.
Yeah, no, I like that idea there in what Jeff's example, the analogy you were using with the water treatment, I think before it gets to us, it needs to have some preliminary, evaluation done. As far as, like you said, what's the existing capacity, where are we going with the next phase of it and that kind of thing, which ties into what you were saying, so we could get them ranked, and, but that looks like a really good template, the Moab
Mhm,
template looks like a good place to start.
mhm. Okay. Okay, Brad, what do you think?
Well, I was looking at the last line of the Moab had a link to the commerce site. And I was questioning why you had Waterville and Moab being out of state, when on this chapter 6 of the CFP guidebook, you have they list some good examples, as in Westport, Oak Harbor, Walla Walla. And
All of those have prioritization matrices though. They have, those are examples, good examples of capital facility plans. But they may not all have matrices.
yeah, because I mean, the Moab definitely looked like it was different columns than were in the priority matrix spreadsheet. So I guess I guess I guess all I can say is
It's a lot to digest.
yeah, I guess I thought I would expect that the city of Moab did not use the Washington State Commerce documents as a template, right?
Not that I know of.
If you see something, it looks like Moab is totally different. Doesn't have column headings in the spreadsheet. Don't appear to match up to me. Now, do they match up?
Just an example, not necessarily.
Yeah. So I mean,
Department of-
Like- comparing apples to oranges.
Well, shouldn't we be looking at something that's gonna work for the Mason County? And if we look at other municipalities around the country and
Yeah.
they kind of sort of are sort of what we would like to do. I mean, what we're talking about here is instilling or reestablishing a discipline, right?
It's gonna take time too.
Right.
And so,
we're not gonna-
Why, not, you know,
This is a 3-year event. to
Well,
get
why
it
not,
dialed in.
see what the heck everyone else is doing and cherry pick what's best for us. I mean, that's best practice. And the other thing too is the staff are the ones who are gonna have to live with it.
I got a question about kind of using your analogy with the water treatment and then in overall budgeting, which is part of the plan. The example you were using of, trying to know what the capacity was of an existing system, which would probably require a study, right? Where we'd have to hire people to do the study. So where would that money come from? It would have to come from the budget, right?
Well,
I
that,
think so.
personally, I'm a little frustrated with the county when it comes to analysis, because I believe, and I look at things, you're not gonna, you talk about making a perfect, matrix, and you don't need it. You need to start. That's a point. You don't need a perfect analysis. You don't need a perfect budget. But you need some realism and some, okay, look, it can serve this much as far as users, the way users are currently using it today. I mean, I'm not trained on the thing. I mean, sewer was not my top, or water was not my top 10 on my first 30 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never thought.
Times change.
So with that said, would the county then have people in-house to do like just a basic, synopsis of what a system like that would require, just again, using that
My
example?
opinion of people's skill sets, they have the capacity,
Okay, yeah,
whether they have the time
yeah,
or whether they have the desire or whatever the issue is. Because it seems like whenever I get into it and discuss it with whoever is heading up that department, we can talk.
yeah.
And and communicate, and they can tell me yes, and I agree that's that factor. So I'm saying it seems like we have the skill set. It's just that we never get there. And I know never's, absolute, but the point I was gonna raise about this, do you see a public side to this, meaning, okay, so they go through the process and everybody checks their thing. Do you see the public looking at this early on or part of it, or?
I would. Someone's gonna have to, help me with the rules.
These are more internal.
I would look at these as more internal.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
So how'd you get the public to, or they just have to be like me, where you just stick your nose in?
Well, no, I think, okay, I think part of the question is we want to be transparent, but we also have to be able to communicate. If we're going to have, if we need to have every I dotted and every T crossed to ensure, 7 significant figures of accuracy, that's one thing. Well, I say that because, there are some people, I mean, look, it doesn't matter what matrix, what tool or spreadsheet or ranking we use. There are those who are going to say that is not the right solution. Because bottom line, my project's not funded this year. And therefore it's wrong. And it's like, okay, fair enough. But when you try and balance across the community, how do you balance all these differing, very, very open priorities? And that's why I always like the idea of, okay, so, when I said, hey, you got, I used the 40 million equation, but I went to 50 million on the top list. Why? Because I think a degree of subjectivity needs to occur at that board. Probably with strong recommendations from staff saying, while it's not in the top 40 mil of available funding, we want to pull up project X because of, and it's something subjective that's not on the list. There's got to be judgment in here a little bit. But ultimately, when we're dealing with, a community, we have a large community, we are going to have those that will likely come into this chamber and be respectful but vocal on their agreement or disagreement with the solution set.
They're gonna be passionate about their issue.
Whatever their issue is, yeah.
Okay.
I just shared the screen. I apologize for not asking ahead of time.
We don't see it yet.
So I had taken it off, but and now I'm not able to share again. Oh wait. This is the link in the bottom of the Moab. And so inside, is this not where the decision/priority matrix came from?
The comment,
Can we find that template on there? I
The one-
searched for guidebook and resources, and I found the page, but somehow chapter 6 of the.
I think the link may be inside that guidebook.
Maybe on which?
Within the capital facilities planning guidebook. should be within there.
It was muffled. I still couldn't understand what do you want to share a screen and with this and show where it came from, where the priority maker came from? Because I guess my question is the decision matrix that you sent us, had that been modified from Commerce, customized for Mason County? Or
No.
was it,
No, it
No.
hasn't, I haven't modified it, just their example.
okay, and so we would add rows to that,
You would add or delete as
Yeah.
appropriate.
On the left side there where it has the projects, you would input your own projects and then. For what
I'm going back to this document that. So we would add projects by. There's 21 projects on the sample sheet. So we would take from our CFP, CIP projects on there and customize it to make sure every project in our CFP, one we looked at 2 months ago, or maybe last November, 4 months. So, and would they suggest that we also add the additional questions here across the top? Would they suggest we customize and add or modify these 28 questions?
Well, would you want something super duper complicated that no one understands and eventually ignores it?
Yeah.
Or do you want something that's more tactical and flexible? You know, you can always add rows and columns in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, if I may jump in here, I think what Brad, I think what you're looking at is you're looking at the spreadsheet layout that does have 21 projects listed. That is one of the 3 examples. It is not, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's not associated with the Moab. It's simply another example.
Yes. It's just
Yeah. So what we have is what staff has presented to us is sort of 3 spectrums of ideas for us to consider. Where they came from is totally irrelevant. Simply
Well,
what I'll call a fairly simple city of Waterville solution, a Moab solution, and then the spreadsheet solution, because I don't see where it came from. It doesn't really matter. And it's sort of going up in stages of complexity, depending upon, you know, I think I'm hearing what we believe, and then we would, you know, collaborate with staff and ultimately take an idea, or staff would take an idea to the board. And then once we have, you know, their concurrence that that's how they want to move forward, probably some adjustments along the way, then that's what we would use in the SIP moving forward.
Yes, correct.
well, I would think that we should use the sample templates from Washington State instead of the other states, Utah, and is Waterville in Connecticut or?
Don't know, don't care. I mean, I can real simple. I'll put an X here over Moab and I'll put Washington there. This is from Washington State now.
Except that would not, in my mind, that would not make sense to use their template. We
Okay,
should use something that came from the state of Washington, Department of Commerce.
okay.
So I would vote to use this template and look at those other, let's see, let me call up the,
I think we're getting a little bit too deep into the weeds for what the purpose of this workshop activity is. We've seen some examples provided by staff, and we've kicked the tires. And my guess is that whatever the final product eventually becomes will probably be closer to the Washington State and Moab as opposed to the Waterville. You know, that's just me talking.
It'll say Mason County on it.
Oh, well, obviously.
Yeah, well,
And that'll be reviewed and approved by the commissioners.
Yeah.
You know, what we're in effect, what we're doing is establishing a new way or a better way of doing this type of activity in the county. Staff has been working diligently at cleaning up our ordinances and stuff. You know, things that have gone on for decades are now getting to the point where they need to be brought back into line and conform with state requirement. And it's going to be an arduous task, and this is just another one of the things that needs to be done to establish or reestablish discipline. And which is what the constituents of the county, the taxpayers want. And we're getting there slowly. And so, you know, it's like anything else. This is gonna be one heck of a spaghetti pie until we get ready to bake it.
As I've seen things like this done in the past, again, huge compliments. to
Oh, yeah.
staff. This is really good. You know, I saw one organization move to the point where, you know, if you look at a 6-year SIP, and once something like this is implemented over a few years, literally, you know, so as you end 24 and you're locking in 25, 25 is literally no change unless there is a hard change in legal requirements or something really hard. 25 is locked in, and literally as you at the end of 24, as you're approving the 6th year, and therefore 25 becomes the execution year, what you have in 2 years out in the 26th year becomes locked down. It's not pull and replace right at the end, but it starts to provide lots of consistency. So staff and departments know what's coming. So I know if I'm 2 years out, I have a high confidence of funding. So I'm working those. I can't just slide something in at the last minute that's not quite all the way baked. You know, if there are legal requirements, it's different. It also provides, I think, most importantly, confidence to our community, what we're delivering as a county. Because we're laying out 24 months out with a degree of confidence, with concurrence of the board, that we're gonna stay the course. And in 2 years, we're delivering that next project for you. And it takes time to work to that, but if you can, it's a great way to build confidence in people because they know we're gonna deliver.
It's getting, I'm to the point now, excuse me, looking at everything and thinking about stuff based on my experience and listening to you guys. We're gonna need an activity just among us Packers to come up with something, and I'm talking probably a 4 to 6, maybe 8 hours to really gel down what we want to do or what we think we should do for a presentation, have staff input and advice and guidance. Because what we're talking about is a fundamental different change in how things are happening or are evolving in the county administration. You know, and that's going to be, I would say this, independent of whenever the heck the fiscal year starts or ends and all these things. I mean, we're starting to go down this path of, gee, we're going to have to change how we sort of kind of do the things around here. Is that what we as a committee want to do? Are we willing to take that on?
I'm not sure if we're seeing it quite, I mean, I don't see it quite that in depth yet. I mean, because you're keeping it relatively simple to this.
Right, but look at what we've been discussing, especially with your
No,
sphere of endeavor,
right.
right?
Can we capture some of your piece in the comp plan?
Yes, can I address
Please.
Jeff's part? I think a lot of what you're talking about, your concerns about just kind of what do we even have? What's its life
Right.
length? What's its needs? It goes into the capital facilities element.
Yes.
And Marissa has been updating, you know, taking what we've had.
Right.
And we see a lot of gaps, and she's done a lot of research on filling the gaps as much as she can. But we are working with SCJ, and I'll have Marissa jump in if I say anything wrong, but SCJ, it's in their contract, they are going to assist us with that capital facilities element and trying to get those components that we've never really had before. And then the CIP is like, you know, that's where the project specific and the funding and all of that. But you should be able to look back on the capital facilities
Right.
element and recognize, well, if we're gonna spend all this money in the Allen
Right.
sewer, why?
Right,
Oh, well, here it says that we've maxed out capacity, we need to add additional blah, blah, blah. We think, you know, this many more people are going to live in Allen over the next 20 years, and we have to upgrade the facility, et cetera,
Right.
that kind of thing.
right,
And honestly, by the time we get something, you know, if we go forward with this, by the time we get something nailed down here, there's already going to be a bunch of that work on the capital facilities element done. And that most likely will come before you, maybe before we even get a decision on this. So, but this is just a session to kind of get initial thoughts on, is it even something we want to go forward with? Because it is going to be additional work, like you said, for you guys as well.
All right,
So,
that's
and
why
it's going to be additional work for staff in different departments. So that's also, you know, I want to get your initial feelings on it so I can take it back to them and see if it's even something they will be able to, you know, have the staff to.
Mhm.
to
Is there sufficient workforce
Yeah.
available?
well, in that context, I'm game,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it may not go, you know, where I think the perfect fit is, but it'd be so much further ahead of where we are. That, you know,
Well,
even if it hit nothing what I wanted, but we're further ahead, so that's progress. What, you know, what are we about?
I think this draft here from Moab really is really good. At the very end, you add up all the weighted scores, you get to 85%. And then they have 15% to be redistributed, calibrated based on testing. And so you're right, Bill. Let's get something out there.
You get the
Let's
15%
provide,
as a
let's
reserve.
try and remove some of the subjectivity. Let's try and, you know, start to help staff, you know, as we can to put together something that, you know, we can stand behind, staff can stand behind, that we can present to the community that provides confidence in what we as a county can deliver. And, you know, and we'll adjust as we go. It's not gonna be perfect. Look, I am confident this, by the time we ultimately walk something in this room to our commissioners, there'll be a lot of adjustment, and I'm confident they have some thoughts too, from their perspective.
Well, they're monitoring what we're doing,
Yeah,
so. I'm sure that if we go off on a wrong tangent, we'll be
recalibrate.
advised.
Well, you never know. Never know. But no, I mean, bottom line is, I don't have a problem with the additional time. Personally, I don't have the
Mhm.
problem with spending additional time if it gets me to a better answer and gets
Well,
staff
you're-
to a better answer.
Obviously, your passions are on your shoulder and arm and top of your head, and
Water, sewer,
it's like,
Yeah.
yes, it all flows downhill.
right. But don't worry, I'll pop up under housing in a bit. You watch.
Okay. So we kind of sort of,
We got one more, once you wrap up, we got one more.
right, I think we're pretty well done with item 3 workshop. Should we mosey on?
One question. Do you have what you need? Is there anything you would ask of us before we close this out?
I would ask if you have any additional comments on any of the examples, or if you come up with any other criteria, to email me by April 11th. So if I can communicate to the different departments when we get together.
I'll get you something this week.
And let's be kind of specific too. That way staff won't, well, I would say this,
I can.
I would say this, more effective in their jobs as opposed to what the hell did Jeff really want?
Well, a question, do you think, and I'll back away from it once I have the answer. Do you think the issue that I was raising as far as having, you know, like legal or anything, should just not be part of this at this point?
I would leave it off at this point would be
Okay.
my suggestion. I think what I would suggest is we take these 3 examples and basically tonight say, we prefer this type of a format, this type of a detail over the other two, whatever that is. And we focus our efforts on building out that one a little bit. And then once we understand what the criterion is, then we at a later date determine who do we think needs to be involved in the review process. Because I suspect our community planning department already has some methods in play. You know, a project just doesn't show up here without some other folks looking at it. We just don't know what that is. So let's trust that staff already has that covered. Let's come up with what we think, what we would suggest the criterion be, and then we can have, and the weighting, and we move that forward. That would be my suggestion. So
Right.
we pick one of the three, focus our efforts there and go, yes, sir.
Finish what you're, let me interrupt. I would think we should use this policy decision matrix because it comes from the State Department of Commerce. And if that could be the standard that counties around the state use, rather than not reinventing the wheel, not using from another state. I mean, Ms. Holman, who her name is on the website, and she's the one that gave up, what was it, 4 months ago, that she gave a presentation to us about the CIP, and we shouldn't waste the effort that the State Department of Commerce planning did. If I'm all for standardization, and if all counties could use the same form and try to make it work, then that would be easier to communicate with other counties and all do it in a similar way.
Okay,
Well, then I'll take I'll drive it in a different way. I make a motion that we take the approach, initial run at it with the Moab approach. And let's get it moving.
all right, do we have a second?
This is a work session.
There's,
Huh?
yeah,
This
What?
is a work
this is
session.
a work session, not a
No
public
official
hearing. to
Oh.
action.
action.
So you don't make it?
I'm learning.
Wow.
That's fine.
So, okay.
So
Cool.
just the workshop, like Marissa was saying, so it's just to get feedback, so she could say, hey, the feedback from the workshop is that we go in this direction.
Oh, well,
And that she could start working and presenting, and maybe it might be helpful, Marissa, from the state's perspective, like they gave an example, but it's not required for local jurisdictions to use. They were just trying to be helpful, and you know, I don't know if you
So
found
from-
any jurisdictions that use it or.
so from a work session, okay, cool. Say we have disagreement amongst members, which inevitably will happen. How does that work its way through? In other words, so that, in other words, let's just say for sake of argument, it's 3-2 that they don't want. How does staff communicate that to the board and what have you?
So my intention with this meeting was to take your feedback to the departments. And I want to know if what you want to do initially is something that I can actually make happen. Because I don't want you guys to vote on something that I'm going to take to them, and they're gonna be like, I don't have the staff, I can't, there's no way I don't have the time to do this. So, this is just initial ideas, take it to the departments, get their feedback, bring that feedback back to you guys and see if we can shape something
Okay.
that we can actually have a vote.
Okay, so, but I mean, is that gonna be by our next planning meeting, the 15th, if you need
No, it's not, this isn't gonna be, I'm
Okay, fine.
hoping, yeah.
Okay,
not
fine.
By next week.
Okay.
No.
Okay,
So I'd like to follow up. So the spreadsheet version here, did I hear you? Is anyone using this that you know?
I have not seen in my research anyone that is attaching that as an exhibit to their CIP as that
Okay.
being their use as we.
So this Department of Commerce example dated 05, we are not aware of anyone using it today.
I'm not aware.
Okay.
There might be, but you know, I'm not.
Based on your
Yep.
investigation.
200 and some odd cities and 31 counties, and
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of, no, you haven't checked them all, but
Requirement, it's
No.
not a state mandate
Okay.
to use it.
very good.
Okay.
That's
We could ask Carol Holman, since
Yep.
her name is on the website,
What I can
and
do is
perhaps answer that question better.
I can send an
Talk to
email.
all the-
I can send an email to Carol about the matrix from Commerce and then forward her answer on to all of you guys,
That would be
if
fantastic.
that works. Brad,
That
Would
works.
be appreciated, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we ran this one to ground, so we can talk about Jeff's discussion.
I'll be quick, promise. I was looking, I can't remember who got back to me, but basically I asked the question, are we addressed, this is the comprehensive elements in the plan, and there was this long document, I don't know how many pages, but a number. And it had kind of a hierarchy of sometimes the laws that affected, whether we had it in the plan, whether we're gonna, changes need because of statute or and other notes. Going through that, it seems to me almost all of them we need to address to one degree. The problem is, I haven't had the time to research each one, but each time I kind of dig into one of these, it seems like we need to address it when we work the comprehensive plan, even though you'll say, like, for example, right off the bat, on the land use element, the third item down, A, you say changes needed to meet the current statute, no. But that still means you would still update it, right? I mean, because if there's changes, like
what was that again?
under the land use element. You give a present, a statement and then RCWs that support it, and whether it's in our plan, yes or no. And then it says, like, changes needed to meet current statute. Even though we say no, that doesn't mean we're not gonna be updating it. To some extent. I mean, like, if it's populations or acreage or things like this.
Yeah, if there's specific data that needs to be updated, they just might be mentioning that it's addressed there might be some things that are addressed, but the data actually needs to be updated.
Okay, and not to belabor it, because I'll put it to writing better. I've started, but in looking at the community profile and then looking at this and then looking at the comp plan of 2016. And this, there's a number, what I would call in the data world discrepancies, at least things that aren't aligning up. And even within the community profile, there's like the number of, what was the issue I came across, and I'll highlight it better. But it's basically what we talked about, occupied units in 2010 versus occupied units in 2011, or 2021, and the number, comes out 3,200 and some odd, but that doesn't seem to match the population if you're using 2.55 through it. I will outline it and get it, but I'm just saying there's just a collage, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, there could be. If you find that stuff, please.
And because,
And be real specific.
I'll be real specific. Because it's like, because I look at, because I'm trying to get an understanding, so I look at the housing and needs assessment. And they're using, and we gotta get our denominators the same. Even if we have to put a factor in to get us to that point, because they're chopping off one day, we're chopping off at another, so you look at it and it's never. You just can't get.
You want to be on the same page.
You're right, so. But I just want to let you know that I've been looking at it, there's discrepancies that way. Another, and then I'll leave it at this, well, actually, two things. The key point is, I'll call it this group called us, the 65 and older. Okay. Basically, if you look at a 20-year plan, statistically, all but if you use the state's population numbers, all but 2% of us are gonna be here in 20 years. Okay, of the county's population. what that means is, on average, it means we're gonna have like 270 or 80 homes pop free every year. And so we need to factor that in. We have a skewing that's different than the rest of the state. We have home ownership that's way higher than the state and national average. We have a population that's way older, but we have more disabled than average. And last but not least, I found it fascinating that I saw the employment thing, that basically the employment for Mason County had not grown in 10 years, maybe 400. But people employed in Mason, but working outside Mason County grew by 4,000. So I thought, these are things that I think that mean things like with roads, and mean things like, transportation, and, and internet and things of that nature, that infrastructure wise you need to address. So these are abnormalities I'm seeing that is unique to Mason County that's not the same for our surrounding counties. So anyway, I'll leave it at
It
that.
makes perfect sense. People working in Olympia and people working in the shipyard
So,
who do the commute.
but I'll get details and these points and shoot it your way.
Couple other thoughts on the comp plan is on the population piece. And maybe this is a detail too far. I'd like to understand, obviously we had those big band, the basically 0 to 50% range of growth over the next 26. But what, somewhere we'll get to, this is whatever our slope is of growth that's anticipated. And I think, Jeff, you make a good point, is how is the characterization of the population growing? Because when I'm just going to this in the planning, they have the sort of tornado chart here. And Brad, I don't know if you can see it. This is from last month, page 8 of the community profile. But if when you look at the bars of male, female of population, some of the biggest overall bar lengths for male and female are the age group 55 to 59, 60 to 64, 65 to 65 to 69 is the biggest bar on the chart. And then 74 to 70 to 74. And to your point, in 20 years, most of us many of us won't be there. Just look, because the bars after that get really short, really fast.
Right.
Okay. And so as that population moves through and new population comes in, they may literally be a very different demographic. They might be younger. They might be school age. I mean, what's a characterization? And then in this comp plan, how are we integrating with school districts, with fire department, with other elements of our county to say, this is what we project, this is what the long-term planning is looking at for the community. Because as we start to say, hey, we're gonna have, let's just say 40% growth in people. But if that 40% is not in the 55 to 75 bracket, but is in, say, the 35 to 55 bracket, does that mean we need a 40% increase in our sheriff's department? Or maybe does that need to be a little larger because they have some different lifestyles than our 55 to 75 folks? But these types of questions, we're not going to have a perfect answer, but these types of questions might help, our departments and our board look at what's next and what are we doing, and so how are they going in there. And the last, and this is probably a pretty loaded one, is as we look at the role of our subcontractor, our county staff, our other elements like City of Shelton, fire districts, schools, etc., and the PAC, do we have any integration of how things will be reviewed and what people's roles are? And what I'm thinking of is actually like a RACI chart. That is, who is responsible, who is accountable, who do you coordinate with, and who do you simply inform? It's normally a tool a lot of projects or other organizations use to say, okay, here's a piece of staff work. I go to Mike because he's going to approve it, but I have to coordinate through Bob because he's a key member. But I only inform you, Jeff. You're really not, I don't even talk to you. And I use you three because you're at the table. It's the only reason.
It is as appropriate as.
Well, how
Who's talking the
Mike was
most,
at the side,
talking the less.
but I think I think understanding that as a PAC and understanding our role, because I suspect a lot of our role is more in coordination or in form. And I really think a lot of coordination, but that might be really helpful for us to understand our role and then how we might help communicate with others as we reach out and work this. So that's just something I would toss out there. And if you got questions, you got my phone number, give me a holler. I'll come down some afternoon and, we'll play on the whiteboard for a little bit. That's normally where I like to operate. So.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got. Can I just jump in?
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Because you are an advisory commission, and so you're making advisory decisions to the board. And, the planning isn't black and white, it's very gray, and the state has some mandates for us, and you'll see
Absolutely.
that
Yep.
check, not the checklist, what's that,
Well,
the thing that
GMA.
Congress put together, the GMA checklist.
Yeah.
There's mandates that we have to address, but it doesn't say exactly how. And so, Marissa could make it all up, and you guys could go, yeah, that's great, but it's better as you guys as representatives of the community in your different locations across the county, and then you're not just all in Matlock or all in Belfair, that you have a broad spectrum across the county and you're helping inform, so we have a single decision then to bring to the board. So it's kind of a staff effort. I view our role as knowing what we can and can't do based on what Commerce is saying, this is what you have to do, but there's all kinds of room. And then, but you are making those choices on, the details to bring forward, so. And that's why there's an odd number of you, so you're not all going to agree.
For sure.
And then you get to the board and they may not agree with you at all.
That's
You
true
know,
too.
I've seen that happen before, or send things back to you guys, but
Okay. So if we ran this one to ground, enough for you, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. I said
Okay.
my piece
All right.
and I'll do what I gotta do and we'll just keep hammering
I
at
just
it.
want to make sure you're, satisfied with the
Oh,
discussion.
I'm never satisfied, I'm coming to the wrong place. Yeah, right. This is the wrong place for that.
All right,
Okay.
so you're not gonna have a happy face, all right.
I'm gonna have a smile.
We're gonna work on it. We'll get there.
we're
Okay.
still local government and we're small. and there's
No, I
still
know
room
that.
for improvement. That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like you go somewhere else and it's like, oh
No,
my
I know-
gosh,
I
it's
know.
just so out of control. There's no hope.
Easier
But here,
I understand. I mean, I come from King County, so I understand what's there.
We're just the SS Minnow, we're not the Titanic.
So
let's do it.
Okay.
Anything else or may I make
please,
motion to adjourn?
Seconded by whom?
I'll second it.
All right, so been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. So I'll see you guys next month.
15.